Every single New York Jets fan has a different opinion on quarterback Justin Fields, but there's one common misconception surrounding the signal caller as training camp kicks off. What is that misunderstanding? We'll talk about that and much more all coming up here on a Thursday edition of NY Flight Jets Talk, joined by the great Michael Nania of Jets X Factor, baby. Let's go.
Jets, Jets, let's go.
Jets wide receiver Wesley Walker. Wesley, how you doing today? ESPN writer Mr. Rich Samini, Jets reporter for The Athletic, Mr. Zach Rosenblatt, Hall of Famer and Jets legend Mr. Marty Lyons.
Your host, Connor Law.
What is going on, New York Jet fans? Hello, everyone, and welcome back here into another edition of NY Flight Jets Talk right here on this Thursday morning, July 24th, 2025. Make sure you smash that like button and hit subscribe on your way into the building. It's completely free, and it helps us grow significantly right here on the show. Questions, comments, thoughts, throw those in the chat. Call into the show with the pinned comments. Super chats, memberships, they get you raffle entries, and they do help us grow significantly right here on the channel. Appreciate all of your support. As always, it is Connor Long right here with you on NY Flight Jets Talk, and joining me right now here on the show, a very special guest, the great Michael Nania, co-founder, co-owner, JetsXFactor.com. Michael, thank you for gracing us with your presence right here on the show, and how you been?
Oh, I mean, the privilege is mine to be graced in the presence of a true in-person Jets beat reporter. I'm the privileged one here.
I appreciate it. It was, we were chopping up before the stage, and I know I shared some, experiences on the show yesterday, but it was certainly super fun being in Florham Park as a credentialed member of the media, reporting and writing until a late hour for JetsXFactor.com. It was certainly very fun, and it couldn't happen without all of you guys, without all your support, and then obviously all the help that you've given me, Michael, throughout my journey as an aspiring journalist and broadcaster. So appreciate you as always, and I am super happy that you are able to be here right here on NY Flight Jets Talk. And you wrote a great article for JetsXFactor.com just a few days ago, 4 days ago, before training camp did officially start. And obviously, Jets still only one practice in. The second practice is today, still not open to the public. First practice open to the public is tomorrow. You broke down a common misconception about Justin Fields among the New York Jets fan base entering training camp. For those who didn't read that article, what was that misconception and how can it truly affect the Jets season?
Yeah, I think with Fields going into this camp, there's a belief that because he is the penciled-in starter, he's going to start in week one. I don't think that's in doubt at all. Aaron Glenn has been vocally committed to him. Darren Muji as well when he spoke. It's very clear that the Jets want to give Fields his best chance yet to figure this out, put it all together, and hit the ceiling that he had when he was the 11th overall pick. All of that is clear. But I think that kind of creates a misconception to where Fields is going to have a stress-free training camp. There's not a lot on the line for him. I see it differently because I do think that going into the season, once the ball gets kicked off in week one, there's going to be a clock ticking for Justin Fields because as committed as they are to him in terms of, what they've said and the potential that he has, it's, this isn't a quarterback they drafted top 5, yes, traded up to get, signed to a massive deal. It's a 2-year, $40 million deal, which for a veteran, non-rookie contract quarterback, it's one of the cheapest, lowest commitment deals for starting quarterbacks in the league. And with this coaching staff, as much as the Jets are, a younger team and they're transitioning and all that, they want to win games. This isn't a rebuilding team that is going to accept, we're okay with winning 5 games and developing young talent. Mm-hmm. They know they're not going to win the Super Bowl, or at least that's not the expectation.
AG even said that yesterday, by the way, for those who are wondering. Something along those lines.
Yeah, right, exactly. They know they're not a championship contender yet, and they're building towards that, but they're also not in that stage of just, we're going to throw young guys out there and ride it out and just let it happen. Like, they want to win games. I think they know that. And obviously, that's not a groundbreaking statement. Oh, they want to win. But, I think Glenn and Muji understand that to get this thing moving in the right direction, it's not just about getting younger, cleaning up the cap, and just developing talent. They have to create that launching point to bounce off of, and that requires, if not making a playoff spot, getting close to it. And you look at what the Lions did in Dan Campbell's first 2 years. Obviously, he comes in, that's a rebuilding roster. They win 3 games, but the next year they start 1-7, I think, and they finish 9-8.
Yep.
You need that springboard most of the time, barring like you sign Tom Brady with the Bucks or you luck your way into a Jaden Daniels type quarterback. Most of the time, teams that climb to the top from where the Jets are starting have to have that middle point season first, where they win 8-9 games. So that's the priority. And if to bring all that back to Justin Fields, if he starts the season struggling, he's unproductive as a passer, inconsistent, I think there's a shorter rope than people realize when you have Tyrod Taylor sitting right there, who
Yes.
his passing efficiency in recent years has been pretty clearly better than Justin Fields. He's a guy you can win games with. He's not the starter because he doesn't have potential and he's old, which makes sense. But if you get a
Injuries.
couple games into it, and injuries as well is another big part of it.
Yep.
But yeah, you get a few games into it. I think if Fields is struggling, that the rope could be short because the Jets I think they want to win games more than they want to develop him. So in training camp, if he struggles, I think it will have an impact on that rope to start the season. If he plays really well, maybe they give him some leeway that he'll figure it out eventually. But, if there are warning signs throughout camp in the preseason, then I could see them going into the year and having a pretty short rope for him if things start off slowly. So I think that's a misconception that there's nothing on the line for Fields. It's stress-free for him. I think he has a lot to prove in camp to buy himself some rope once the regular season is here.
Michael, no matter what week it is, week 1 through week 18, Aaron Glenn is the type of head coach to put the quarterback on the field who he thinks gives the team the best opportunity to win. And, you get 4 or 5 games in the year, and the Jets are 1-4. The Jets are 1-3 and are off to a rocky start with, Justin Fields' QBR all the way down, not being as efficient as a passer, throwing a ton of interceptions, taking a lot of sacks. You could certainly see, a call to the bench for Tyrod Taylor just to try to provide a spark there. And I think that's certainly something interesting to monitor. As for Fields' performance yesterday, I said it on the show yesterday. I hate to give this answer, but he was iffy. That's the way I describe it. He was very up and down. There were some sessions in 11-on-11 where it's like he's really, really moving the ball. Some nice swing passes to the running backs. He was pushing the ball downfield. He had a beautiful pass to Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson made an over-the-shoulders catch about 30-plus yards downfield. I do think that one was actually posted on social media with Garrett Wilson going up and mossing none other than the $36 million man himself, Brandon Stevens. But overall, he was a little iffy. There were some possessions where he held on to the ball a little bit. He was a little jittery in the pocket. But look, it's just one training camp practice. This guy's still getting into his, still acclimating to his coaching staff, still acclimating to this scheme, his new teammates, and much more. So certainly wouldn't overreact over one practice, but definitely agree with that misconception there that you overall pointed out. I want to get into someone who hasn't been able to find the field, wasn't able to find the field at all during his rookie season, and had a rough first practice yesterday, that being Malachi Corley. Broadly speaking here, Michael, what do you think his percentage is right now of cracking the team's 53-man roster?
I would put it somewhere around 50-50. I don't think it's guaranteed just because of, this regime didn't draft him. So I think that's a pretty big deal in terms of, how much leeway does his draft stock buy him? I think because they didn't invest that pick, it's different than most third-round picks. But, he's an interesting case because I think there are a lot of things going against him last year. You pointed it out. That coaching staff was very anti pre-snap motion, and that's something that should work really well for a guy like him. Put him in motion, get him jet sweeps. Even if he doesn't get the ball, there's impact that could be had off of that threat. And they weren't a motion-heavy team, and they didn't really give him opportunities to just, be a playmaker. And of course, the one time he did get a chance to do that, he throws the ball away. But so yeah, there were things going both ways. And, you would also think that he didn't perform too well in practice or impress him too much in meeting rooms, things like that, because you would think that third-round pick that they hyped up so much, they would love to get him on the field, but he wasn't able to do that. So was he struggling on the practice field? So there are things going both ways things working against him, things that were in his control. But with the new coaching staff here, it's kind of ground zero for him. So we have to see if he can get on the field and make plays when he's out there. Not a good start first day, like you said. But it's wide open, and I do think they have like his role specifically. Even though the wide receiver competition is deep, there's not a lot for that specific, archetype of player. So I think that gives him an avenue. So we'll see. I mean, there's just so much unknown because we haven't seen that much of him. But on the practice field last year, I think it's safe to assume that he left a lot to be desired. Whether it's meeting rooms, practice, clearly there was something missing that prevented the coaches from putting him out there. And I think that's why these next few weeks are very important for him because, on the field, we just didn't see that much. But, if he performed better in the practice field, I think we would have seen more reps of him. So it's these days right here where he really has to prove himself, I think.
Absolutely, and I always hear a lot of Jet fans saying, well, they also drafted Arian Smith. I think that's another misunderstanding with the fan base. Arian Smith and Malachi Corley, in my opinion, from watching them, are two very, very, very different players. Arian Smith is a guy who uses his speed, his very fast 40 time to get downfield, take the top off the defense and be a deep threat, be a yak threat. That's what I see in Arian Smith. You see Malachi Corley also as a yak threat, but you see him on end arounds, on jet sweeps, on gadget plays, on RPOs. I mean, that play where he dropped the ball before he crossed the goal line was a beautifully designed end around that obviously could have scored a touchdown on before dropping it just before he crossed the goal line. So I think getting Malachi Corley's more of a motion guy, a quick pass guy, while Arian Smith's more of a deep threat trying to take the top off the defense. A wide receiver, though, Michael, who I'm very high on, who had a great practice yesterday. UDFA out of South Alabama, Jamal Pritchett, small little guy. I've written a ton of articles for JetX as to why I think he can be a viable option to replace Xavier Gibson. What does he have to show you over these next, these remaining practices to earn your trust and, feel confident in him earning a spot on this 53?
Yeah, I mean, like we said, the competition is wide open. So for a UDFA, I think this is a great landing spot. Because, how many spots on this wide receiver unit are solidified? Garrett Wilson and Josh Reynolds are probably the only guys who are like, and obviously Arian Smith will be on the team. But yeah, in terms of spots for playing time, it's wide open. So if he's going to be continuously productive while, Corley can't get on the field, he's dropping passes, and guys are probably going to get injured at some point. So it's wide open. And like you said, he's on the way small side at 5'8", 175. One of the few receivers in the league I'd be taller than. But yeah, so it's good to see that he's been productive, and they could use that type of receiver. Like, Corley's a gadget type. I think Arian Smith has a lot of downfield potential, but who's going to be like their Wayne Krebet type of guy? Just give me a 5-yard slant on 3rd and 5, a jittery, quick receiver who can move the chains for you. They haven't really had a guy like that in recent. Obviously, Garrett Wilson is complete and can do
Cotchery was probably the most recent one who really played that role.
Was very consistent at it. Probably looking at Cotchery. I mean, Jermaine Kearse had his nice run there in 2017. Maybe that. Crowder, I guess, Crowder was pretty good for a couple of years. But yeah, they've lacked that the past few years. So I think that's a role where he could maybe find his niche.
Absolutely. I view him as a route running technician. I think that's his role at the NFL level. I mean, I think he's a very, very solid route runner. He also has great hands too. He caught multiple hospital balls, multiple diving catches from, off of quarterback Justin Fields yesterday in practice. Like his hands, like his route running ability, like his return upside as well. You can also, shift Xavier Gibson off the roster if you give Jamal Pritchett a roster spot. So that's what I'm looking at for here, as training camp continues to unfold. Appreciate you all tuning in. Smash the like button, hit subscribe. Michael Nania, Connor Long right here with you guys on NY Flight. Jets Talk questions, comments, thoughts. You can throw those in the chat. We're going to get to those, so keep throwing them in. We see Bill M in the chat. What's up, Bill? John in the building. How you doing, John? Rep NY. What's up, Caden? He says Michael Clemens will make the roster more likely than Malachi Corley, Xavier Gibson, and Donovan Edwards. Thoughts there, Michael?
Yeah, I feel like he's going to end up not making it. I think the cap is a big part of it because he does have that $3.6 million hit in the 4th year of that rookie deal. And in my opinion, and I think a lot of people agree, some don't, maybe the coaches don't, but I don't think he's played up to even that number. And you could clear 3.4 of that if you cut him, and that could roll over into next year. So, like the Jets signed Josh Myers for a number similar to that. A guy who's been a starting center, is a high end backup at the position. You could have Michael Clemens this year, or you could go sign a Josh Myers or like a Josh Reynolds next year. So I look at it in that way because of the cap aspect. But we'll see. I mean, Glenn said positive things yesterday, but I expect him to say that. So we'll see.
Definitely, definitely. Yeah, and I did write that up for Jets X Factor. It was certainly interesting to hear, Aaron Glenn speaks so highly of a very polarizing player on this team. I said if I think Michael Clemens had fit one way on this team, I thought his best way of doing it was, adding 15, 20 pounds this offseason and sliding in as interior defensive line depth. Nani, I just don't think he's fast enough to come off the edge. I think that's just plain and simple.
Yeah, I mean, I know. And the thing that really holds him back is because he has that deficiency, like you're saying, like he's just never going to be a great pass rusher. I know Glenn said, he's got the power, he can bull rush. And, I think that's more theoretical because he's not really good at it. He looks like he should be able to do it. And sometimes it happens, but he's not consistent with the bull rush. He's never going to win around the edge. But you're supposed to get good run defense out of a guy that size on the edge, but he just has such poor play recognition and discipline that he's a massive negative. And teams, we saw it in the first preseason game when they played the Commanders and Jaden Daniels hit that. I forget if it was an option play or just a designed run to the edge, but he ran right at Michael Clemens. He gave up the edge, and teams did that all year. The Anthony Richardson's game-winning touchdown was
Kyle
like that.
Murray in the Cardinals game. I know that was more of a blowout.
Josh Allen definitely did it at least once. So like teams saw that weakness, and like that's the thing. There are so many threatening running quarterbacks in the league that you can't just be a big guy on the edge who can hold his ground against the tackle. You have to be able to get laterally to match these quarterbacks, and he has no change of direction. So in my opinion, and on top of the penalties that he has, which they say they'll fix them, but he's had like 3 every year at this point. So I don't know. He's a not a good player in my opinion.
Yeah. And I truly put a bunch of edge rushers over him. And on a side note, too, by the way, he did shave his head, so maybe it is a sign of a new era for Michael Clemens. But the edge rushers I put ahead of him, I think you look at Will McDonald, I think you look at Jermaine Johnson, Tyler Barron, obviously your 5th round draft pick this year. I'd throw Rashad Weaver and Eric Watts all ahead of him as well. So those are 5 edge rushers who I think are boast significantly more upside than Michael Clemens, are overall better football players. And I can't see this team carrying more than 5 edge rushers. I think that's the max. I think you do, 10 defensive linemen, 10 offensive linemen. I believe that's what they did last year too. That's kind of the standard for most NFL teams. So I think there's a strong chance Michael Clemens doesn't make the roster. He's going to have to earn every single snap throughout, obviously, the remaining training camp practices and then the preseason. So Clemens, again, another name that fans should be watching throughout training camp and the preseason. Incel Allen says Fields will be entertaining in a good way and bad way. That's an intriguing comment. I agree, Michael, because, even when he's not playing his best brand of football, he's running around behind the line of scrimmage, trying to, make a play. I can't tell if Fields' worst moments are going to be better or worse than Aaron Rodgers' worst moments, because there were some plays with Aaron Rodgers where he just overthrow his receiver. I remember there were multiple instances like that in the Dolphins game where either Devontae Adams or Garrett Wilson just got free and, had 5 yards of separation from the cornerback and he sailed it, 5 yards in front of where they could catch it. But then Justin Fields, he has a tendency to, run around behind the pocket like he has his head cut off and, try to still make a play, try to cut one loose. And then that's where a bunch of his interceptions come from. Whose low moments do you think will be worse, Aaron Rodgers or Justin Fields?
I think Fields, they're kind of polar opposites as players because, Rodgers, he didn't turn the ball over too much, much more than we were used to seeing from him, but, still not an insane amount with the Jets, not a ton of sacks. It's more just how inefficient they were overall. And like you said, just the throws that the plays that he didn't make more so than the negatives. With Fields, I think you're going to see a lot more high points. I mean, the rushing aspect speaks for itself. But on top of that, I think he'll be a much better deep passer. That's one thing that he has done well as a passer in the league. You see what he did with DJ Moore a couple years ago. So I think that's great news for Garrett Wilson. It's great news for Arian Smith. So I think we're going to see a lot more high points, but definitely, and these are the biggest things that are going to determine whether he makes it. Can he get sacked less often? Can he fumble it less frequently? He's not horrible with interceptions, and he did better with the Steelers last year. He lucked out a couple times. There were a couple dropped, but overall better. It's mainly sacks, fumbles. Can he get those down? Because in those two areas, he's been the worst in the league since he entered on a rate perspective. How often he gets sacked and how often he fumbles. So those are the things he has to improve. So, I mean, it'll be eventful. I don't know how fun that is to watch as a Jets fan when that happens, but it's eventful. I guess Zach Wilson was like a boring kind of bad because it's just like throwing passes in the dirt and punting over and over. So I don't know. I guess sacks and fumbles are more fun.
Jets Worldwide, why have coaching staffs held Fields back thus far?
I think in Pittsburgh, it was a Russell Wilson offense that he was running. Like, he was the backup who was playing there at the beginning. And it's interesting to see the split in terms of how teams have used him, because last year he goes 4-2 as a starter, and he puts up, in some ways, his best numbers of his career in terms of interceptions, completion percentage, things like that. But they had him playing. He's basically a check down Charlie last year, which was a huge difference from how he was playing in Chicago, where he was, like you said, running like a chicken with his head cut off. He's throwing a lot of deep bombs, like playground.
Also, they had no offensive line there too, so like I give him a bit of a pass there. I mean, it's so, and I don't mean to cut you off. It's just so hard to evaluate Fields based on his different stops because he's been in two completely different situations. Like, I think it's safe to say he performed pretty well in 6 games in Pittsburgh, but then like the play style, I don't think is feasible for 17 games and try to go to the playoffs doing that, especially with the personnel that the Jets have. So it's definitely very different.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what the Steelers' mentality was. They have a great defense. They have the ability to win close games because they get so many takeaways. So they kind of just played him to not lose, and that worked for 6 games. They got the majority of the 6 that he started. But like you said, for 17 games, I think you need more from him because it was his worst rushing season. It was his worst deep passing season. But then when he was doing those things, rushing for 1,000 yards, throwing deep, then he was getting sacked and turning it over a lot. So I think that's the challenge for the Jets. How could they find this balance for Fields where he's still being Justin Fields and running wild, throwing deep passes, but not at the cost of getting sacked and fumbling? How do they find that balance between his explosiveness and helping him be more efficient and safe with the football? Something between last year's Steelers and the 2023 Bears. I think that's where you're going to find the best version of him.
Nania, do we have time for a couple more questions here before we do that?
Yeah, for sure.
Appreciate it. Thank you. John comes in and says, we need to tank games for a quarterback, in my opinion. I'm always anti-tanking, but I've watched some of the quarterbacks, Nania, and I will say a lot of them, from what I've seen, like watching watching film on a bunch of these guys, a lot of them have very high ceilings, but they are very, very, very raw right now. And the guy atop my list right now who I really need to see have a breakout year and see him hit his ceiling this year to be like a top 15, top 10 pick is Drew Aller from Penn State. There are so many intriguing names, intriguing quarterbacks in this year's draft. I think it's way too early to say you want to tank for a quarterback, and I hate to break it to you, I don't think Aaron Glenn is tanking football games.
Yeah, I mean, Jets definitely, they're not deliberately tanking, but from a rooting standpoint, like, do you want them? Is it more ideal to tank for a quarterback? I could somewhat see it because, quarterback purgatory is a tough place to be in the NFL.
Michael? We got you there, Michael? Nania?
Oh, can you hear me? I'm back.
There we go. Right. You're back.
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, quarterback purgatory is tough. So, like, what if Justin Fields is okay and the Jets commit to him like the Giants did to Daniel Jones. Like, that's not the spot you want to be. So could I see the fan argument of like, let's just bottom out, let's get our guy? I can, but at the same time, 14 years of no playoffs, you got to just raise the floor and bring the standard back. At some point, you got to move forward to go forward. Pretty much, the Jets have been trying to go. Jets have been trying to go backwards to move forward for a long time. So at some point, I think you just got to win some games and take it from there. Even if it's murky at quarterback, you just got to win at some point. So I think that's where they're at.
Definitely. Jets Worldwide comes back and says, why do you think Sean Jefferson was the only coach who carried over from the old regime?
Yeah, that's interesting. I honestly can't speak on the assistants too much, but I don't know. He must have been impressive enough to them where they figured he was worth keeping. But yeah, it's kind of hard to know.
Maybe because, wide receiver, you had Garrett Wilson there last year, Devontae Adams. I don't know. But like Sean Jefferson wasn't there Garrett's first season. I'm looking right now. He didn't overlap with Aaron Glenn, so there's not that connection either. He overlapped with Steve Wilkes, but they were complete different sides of the ball, so I doubt that played any impact into it. Yeah, it's interesting, and I noticed that the second the Jets put the staff out, so I don't have a concrete answer, unfortunately, either. Snowball. Alan comes in and says Jets need their Khalil Shakur. That's an interesting take. I'd compare. You could make the argument that Garrett Wilson is the Jets' Khalil Shakur and a lot better Khalil Shakur. I think you're talking here from a wide receiver 2 perspective. Like Nania, I think Garrett Wilson is light years better than Khalil Shakur is, despite what Mr. Kurt Benkert has to say on Twitter, calling Khalil Shakur a top 12 wide receiver just a few months ago.
That?
Oh. Yeah, remember the list that he put out that we wrote about
yeah,
calling Garrett a top 45 receiver. That's yeah, that was the same story. So I think you have your Khalil Shakur and Garrett Wilson. Khalil Shakur is also a wide receiver 1. It would be great to add another body in this receiving room, but I think this is the room that the Jets are just going into for the season. We're gonna have to live with that.
Yeah, I think it's just one of a lot of roster holes that they are pretty much accepting, just because they wanted to reset the cap situation. They had a lot of things to recover from the way they were built the last couple of years. So I think as much as they want to win, I think they kind of accepted for the long term, let's accept some holes so we could stay healthy cap wise and be in a good position going forward instead of just veteran plug here, veteran plug here. So yeah, it's not great, but hopefully in the long run they could figure it out.
Johnny Boy, real question, concerns what special teams do we have any? I was actually telling Nania before we got on the show. I did not see the kickers kicking field goals yesterday, but I did unfortunately see some punts yesterday, which were not pretty. No one really covered it, but first punt of the day from Austin McNamara was off the side of his foot, and he sailed it 20 yards and almost hit the players' families in the stands. So it wasn't pretty. And then Kai Kroger, he wasn't great. His distance was lacking. He was hitting them close to out of bounds. He was solid. He had nice control. He had nice finesse. He was just lacking the distance and hang time, which we know, obviously, myself from reading your articles, that was a major issue for him overall during his college career. So that's certainly something he's going to aim to work on. At this point, I have endless concerns on special teams because none of these guys are established. Both kickers aren't. Both punters aren't. Could, the punter and the kicker not be on the team right now? Sure. And is it a guy they get a cut down day? Potentially. But right now, my concerns are endless at special teams because nobody's established themselves.
Yeah, it's a route that they've taken. And I guess, I like that they picked up Harrison Mevis instead of just going with Carlson, because he at least has a good track record. Caden Davis wasn't even very good in college. So I think Mevis will win that, but we'll see. I think Kroger is my favorite for punter because McNamara had a chance last year. He got cut by the Bengals and no one else even picked him up. But with Kroger, I think, what you said lines up with what I saw from analyzing him. He is a great control guy, but he's got to get that hang time up for the NFL. So if he can't do that, maybe, like you said, there's another punter out there that they're waiting to pick up. And then returner, can Xavier Gibson even catch the ball. It's a shaky outlook at special teams. Very much betting on youth and upside, but there's a lot of risk to it when you don't have established players at any of these positions.
Also,
Along
Gunner.
with a rookie special teams coordinator.
Yes, rookie special teams coordinator, who, by the way, is 35 years old, I believe. A very, very, very young special teams coordinator. Mike Westhoff, though, will be at training camp with,
Yeah.
working with one of his proteges, that being Chris Banjo. So I'm so sure that will, help Banjo kind of learn the ropes, obviously, and take a page out of Westhoff's book in this new position. So that's going to, obviously help Banjo out a ton. But also the gunner position, too, Michael. Irv Charles, he's on the pup list right now. I know that Robert Saleh loved Irv Charles, and I know that Chris Banjo clearly loves Irv Charles. However, are you going to carry 7 wide receivers and have Irv Charles be your 7th and have him only contribute on special teams after he was out the whole summer? Keep in mind on the gun, look at the gunner position as well, because they've definitely been mixing and matching with some guys there, and it's going to be interesting to see what sticks if Irv ultimately comes back, if he's able to, play a role. I don't know if he makes the team, Michael. Do you think he's on the outside looking in August?
If healthy, I think he would. But considering the injury and the fact that this is a new staff and they might not or probably won't be able to evaluate him throughout the summer here, maybe not. And it opens a space for someone to take that same type of role. But even looking at last year, like a lot of the top special teams guys are gone. No more Ashton Davis, Chaz Surratt. Sam Aguavin actually played the most special team snaps on the team last year. He's gone. So there's a lot of Brandon Eccles was another big special teams guy. So a lot of room for these bottom of the roster guys to stand out in that way.
All right, one more question here before we wrap. Another one from Johnny Boy says, which player are you looking to step up as the leader in the locker room from offense, defense, special teams? All right, I'll start at special teams. Easiest one has to be Thomas Hennessy. He's the only one who I think is clear cut to make the roster. Obviously, Michael, a very loyal owner of a Thomas Hennessy jersey. Longest tenured Jet, Thomas Hennessy on special teams. Defense, it would be be easy to say Jamie Sherwood for sure. I'm looking at Will McDonald as a guy to step up. This is a guy who kind of came in a little shaky during his rookie season, wasn't able to establish himself. Now he's coming off a double-digit sack season. I'm looking at him to help mentor these young defensive linemen, all these rotational pieces, and just overall be a leader up front on the defensive line. Then on the offensive side of the ball, I'm looking at Josh Reynolds. He's one of the few veteran offensive players on this team, really the only true veteran wide receiver who I have faith in. Obviously, Allen Lazard, another veteran who I do not have any interest on, giving him targets, giving him snaps this season. So I'm looking at Josh Reynolds as a guy who is going to be the wide receiver too, in my opinion, this season. I think he needs to step up and lead this whole wide receiver room there. Michael, I hope you had some time to process that, and so we can hear your 3 players here.
Yeah, those are great picks. I think looking at the offensive line, I would love to see AVT really step up and be a leader there. At this point, he's going into year 5, big contract year for him. Probably the most talented player they have in this unit. And it's a really young group, so he's got a chance to step up there, I think. And then defensively, Will McDonald is a great pick, but I mean, how about Sauce Gardner? I mean, not that he hasn't really been a leader yet, but there were some times last year where he set questionable examples with reactions post game, maybe not taking the most accountability. I think he improved as the season went along. He had great answers after the year, kind of taking responsibility for some of that. But now when you have the experience, you have the big contract, and you're at this point one of the older guys in the room, I think it's important for him to step up and really set that example. Not just with his play on the field, but with his leadership off of it as well. So I would look to Sauce.
Nania, thank you so much for joining us right here on the show. You got any final thoughts here before we do wrap up?
No, I'm looking forward to more of your coverage. I mean, you'll be at more practices going forward, right? We could look forward to that. I will be
there tomorrow. So yes, I'll be there tomorrow. Hopefully,
looking forward to more of that. I'm glad training camp is here. It's a long NFL summer with not much to talk about other than Kurt Benkert, Garrett Wilson, 45th best receiver. That's your news cycle in June, July.
Exactly.
the NFL. So I'm glad training camp is here. I'm excited. One of the more interesting Jets teams of our time covering this team. Just it's very unclear of where they stand. So it's going to be interesting to see how it pans out.
He's Michael Nania of Jets X Factor. I'm your host, Connor Long. Appreciate you all joining us right here on NY Flight Jets Talk. Smash the like button. Hit subscribe. That'll do it for us right here on this Thursday edition of NY Flight Jets Talk. For Michael, I'm your host, Connor Long. Signing off right here on the show. Have a great rest of your day, everyone. And as always, JTS, Jets, 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 baby. Peace out.